This fragment from the Talmud, which is also included in Midrash Rabbah, symbolizes the most powerful impulse of reconnection with God without the physical temple.
Rabbi Shimon Ben Zoma Yoshev vetohe.
Rabbi Shimon Ben Zoma was sitting down lost in thought, unlike the one of the 4 sages who went to the sacred garden called Pardes and didn't come back at all. Ben Zoma came back, but he was never the same again. It's not difficult to understand what changed him. He started living in 2 worlds at the same time. Physically he was in his body, but in his mind he was seeing the pictures of the world to come. He felt disharmony, as if he wasn't in the right place, as if he needed to go somewhere where his real life was. But some power, like an anchor, was holding him back in this physical world. Imagine a person who tasted the real freedom, knows the real freedom, longs for this freedom, but is being contained in prison. This is how he felt. He lived with the pictures of freedom in his mind, but his body was imprisoned. So Rabbi Shimon Ben Zoma is sitting there, lost in his astounding thoughts, as if seeing something breathtaking. Rabbi Yoshua was passing him by and asked him how he was. In those times, there was a stiff rule of polite behavior amongst the sages, which was very important. Greetings, saying goodbyes, seeing offs, the subordination of scholars and teachers. There was an etiquette and hierarchy between the sages as well as scholars and the people outside the academies. So Rabbi Yoshua, who was passing by and asked him how he was, obviously never expected Ben Zoma not to answer anything in return. Every respectable rabbi always returned a greeting to a greeting. But there was no answer. Ben Zoma was sitting there transfixed. He looked like a mummy, with his eyes wide open, seeing nothing in front of him. He was seeing anything but this world. So Ben Yoshua greeted him once, then repeated the greeting again. But there was no answer. Finally, after a 3rd time, Ben Zoma flinched, as if he was fast asleep, and some noise awakened him, as if something or someone startled him and made him jump. And he answered the 3rd time as if he wasn't there, but Rabbi Yoshua wasn't that simple. Rabbi Yoshua understood that if Rabbi Zoma was sitting there in silence like that, then he was certainly seeing something that Rabbi Yoshua clearly wasn't. And he was desperate to know what Ben Zoma, this great sage, saw. Surely he didn't look beyond the pargot, the veil, and saw what we all longed to see. Surely he didn't already establish the connection. What if he is already at the beginning of the ascent and not in this world, and he can already see everything? And so he says, Ben Zoma, where have you been? Where did you go? I was contemplating, says Ben Zoma. I was thinking. I swear, says Ben Yoshua. Now, swear is not a good word, because the Jews didn't swear by anything, as it was considered ungodly. If we swear by anything, it means we annul the will of the Almighty. If I say I swear I'll be there at a certain time, at a certain place, I ignore the will of the Almighty. As if what we think or what we want is more important than the power of the Almighty. So a man of faith will not swear by anything. We can only swear in one case. If we affirm that something that happened to us in the past is the truth, in that case, we can swear by the past, or by our thoughts, or by our desires. But we cannot swear by the future, because it's blasphemy. That's why I would rather say, I call a witness. So, Rabbi Yeshua says exactly that. I call heaven and earth to witness that I will not move from this space until you say to me, where you have just come from. Now imagine, Ben Zoma was sitting there quietly, meditating. Then Ben Yeshua passes him by, greets him, and when there is no reply neither first nor second time, Ben Yeshua understands that Ben Zoma holds the kind of knowledge that he, Ben Yeshua, never even dreamt about. And then he says, I will not move from this space until you tell me where you have been. So Ben Zoma has no choice. If the heaven and earth are called to witness, it's useless to argue, and it's useless to hide the fact that he lives in two different worlds, because everybody knows it. So Ben Zoma says, I was gazing. Please remember this phrase, I was gazing. I was gazing at the works of creation. And there was no distance between the higher waters and the lower waters. Do you remember the first day of creation, the waters and the Spirit of God hovering over the face of the water, and the division between the higher waters and the lower waters? Do you remember? And now Ben Zoma says, there are no more than 2 or 3 fingers of a distance between the higher waters and the lower waters. Just imagine, 2 or 3 fingers. And he says that between the higher waters and the lower waters, there is not even that much of a distance. They're so close to each other, these 2 or 3 fingers, that we will not be able to squeeze anything in between them. And the Spirit of God blows, but the Torah doesn't say it blows. To blow, it's when a pleasant breeze blows around you, but the Torah doesn't say anything about the breeze. It doesn't say it. It says merachefet. It says hovers. We can say what's the difference between breezing and hovering. There is a huge difference. Imagine a bird which hovers, a bird whose wings do not flap, but just touch, and at the same time do not touch the waters. It's a typical language of Zohar. For example, created and did not create, appeared and did not appear, very mystical. Did it or did it not? Do the bird's wings touch or do not touch the waters? It's not the concept of the physical world. In our world, it either does or it doesn't. On one side, you see that the closeness of the higher waters and the lower waters is so narrow that the bird will not be able to fly in between. If it does, it will touch the higher and the lower waters with its wings. It will be right in between the waters. But on the other side, it's as if it almost doesn't touch the waters. The distance is so immaterial that this concept can only be referred to the spirit but not to the physical body. And the bird's wings touch and do not touch the waters. When Rabbi Yehoshua heard such words, he was startled and turned, as if in his consciousness. If I personally was passing by and heard Ben Zoma talking about the high and the lower waters, the bird hovering above them, touching or not touching the waters, I would have probably thought him mad. But Rabbi Yehoshua was startled and amazed, because he was not far from this knowledge himself, and suddenly it was disclosed to him. The knowledge was almost at hair's breadth of him, the greatest discovery, the moment of illumination. And Rabbi Yehoshua says to his scholars, for he was a great rabbi, a great teacher, his scholars followed him everywhere, catching his every word, his understanding of this world, and its everyday occurrences, the thoughts that were entering his head, and they are following him now, and suddenly he sees Rabbi Ben Zoma, who is sitting there in his outworldly state, and utters these amazing words about the high and lower waters, that they almost merge with each other to such an extent that the bird cannot fly between them. And Rabbi Yehoshua says to his scholars, Ben Zoma has left, and not many days have passed, very few days indeed. And Ben Zoma left for his world. What is this grandiose, breathtaking story about? It's about a man who tasted the sweetness of the spiritual world just once and could no longer stay in the material world. And although he came back the first time, unlike his associate, one of the 4 sages who entered Pardes and didn't return, whose body was found breathless on the ground, Ben Zoma returned. But he longed for the other world so much that he could no longer wait. His soul was already there, but not the body, and it could not last long. If you remember Moshe's words, I can no longer come and go. One cannot be in between these 2 worlds. The spiritual world pulls one in so strongly as if it's one's natural living dwelling. And when Rabbi Yehoshua saw it, he said Ben Zoma could not stay here any longer. Firstly, such people do not really belong here. And secondly, why does he need this material world if he is already not in it? Ben Zoma has left a long time ago. All you see is his physical body, but he is gone a long time ago. Only a few days have passed. And Ben Zoma left for his world. So what exactly did he see? Everything's quite simple. He saw that there is no distance between our world and the other world. They merge together. And the spirit gradually thickens, crystallizes, materializes, and becomes matter. The only person who can detect it is the person that comes and goes to and from. Or to be precise, he has been there and knows that any object in our physical world is just a reflection of the spiritual world. But who would want to see the reflections only if it's possible to be in the presence of the real objects? Who would want to sit on the virtual riverside or the riverside reflected in the mirror if it's possible to be on the true riverside? Walk among the real forest. And Rabbi Yehoshua says he will not stay here. He saw that no big effort is needed, just a slight movement, and he can cross to the other side, and of course he made that movement. He saw that everything is one, above and below. Do you remember the beginning of Ben Zoma's words? I was gazing at the works of creation.